Okay, let's start with our second part of measurement for the building finishes. Okay, we start with the second category of the building finishes. This is known as ceiling finishes. If you remember, the first part of the building finishes we have learned in staircase. Okay, so you can see some of the measurement for this area are similar with the staircase. Where staircase is actually a summary of the building finishes. You can see plaster, painting, you can see the tiles, you can also see the parquet, and the concept of the installation are there. Okay, for the building finishes, before we go for the detail, I would like to look at the line that I would like to draw here. 1, 2, and 3. To make you easy understand and easy remember the element for the ceiling, wall and floor, you can remember the C shape. Okay, C shape, that means if you are here, you remember the C shape looking in front, this is known as wall finishes. If you look at on the top, this one is ceiling finishes, and if you look at the bottom, this is floor finishes. So if I ask you the question, let's measure the building finishes, in your mind, you must have this C interpretation. You must have this C idea where you have to measure ceiling, wall, and floor. If I give you the specific task, okay, today let's measure for the ceiling. So you can see that this is actually part of the building finishes. Okay, staircase finishes is measured under staircase element, but ceiling, floor, and wall will be measured under building finishes. Okay, so basically if we refer to the end part of this particular topic, you are going to measure 6 elements. Okay, 6 elements. Why 6? Because we have number 1, in front, what you will see, Sean? In front. If you are here and you see in front, what you will see, Sean? Sean? Sean is there, wall. And then if you look at on the top, Irene, what you will see? On the top, ceiling, right, Irene? And the last one, Alvin, what you will see on at the bottom? Alvin Mo Kaiming. You have wall, ceiling, and the last one is floor. So when I say 6 elements, that means each of the element will have sub-element. Okay, this is the first overview. So each of these we have internal and external. Okay, sorry, I and E. So that means for internal, you have internal wall and you have external wall. Ceiling also you have internal ceiling and external ceiling. Floor also internal ceiling and external ceiling. Okay, so for today, we are going to measure for the ceiling finishes. You can see the overview here on the right hand side. This is the example of the stretch ceiling, considered as one of the modern for commercial building purposes, and this is also part of this stretch ceiling. The common one available in your house or maybe for the residential, normally we use plaster ceiling. And if you have double story building, especially for the building where you can see the beam, that one is considered as plastered ceiling. We will do the detailed discussion after this, yeah. Right, as the first part, of course, you need to know how to interpret the item from the drawing. So this is actually interpretation of the item to be measured. And then, of course, after that, you need to prepare taking off list. This is the second one. Prepare taking off quantities. And then, of course, prepare the BQ at the end. When you prepare taking off list, you need to prepare the unit of measurement and identify the item based on the clauses. Okay, so basic learning outcome are there. Let's look at the general measurement principle. So the clause that you have to refer for this particular topic is clause S.3. Can everyone refer to your SMM under S.3? Can everyone refer to SMM? What is the title under S.3? Cheng Yixuan, what is title under S.3? What is the title? If you look at S.3, there are 4 main topics. Cheng Yixuan, what you will see? The title, the wall, ceiling, beam, and column, right? Cheng Yixuan? Okay, so we can see that the topic of the ceiling are there. Thank you for your response. The work to wall and ceiling shall each be given separately. So I would like everyone to take note on this particular key point. Wall and ceiling. You can see this one is under the same sub-clause, but because you see the word separately, that means wall and ceiling cannot be measured under one item. Okay, ceiling shall be deemed to include sloping ceiling. So you have to measure the sloping ceiling as well, but this is not under wall. So under S.3.1, work to ceiling and wall shall be measured separately. Look at this example. This is the example of the sloping ceiling. Okay, shall be deemed means you have to measure including the slope and the flat surface under one item. You don't have to measure separately. If you see the word sloping ceiling shall be measured separately, means there are two different items that need to be measured. But number 1 and number 2, how many items to be measured? There is only one. Okay, that is the meaning of shall be deemed to be included in sloping ceiling. Okay, can you refer to S.3.2? Work to side and soffit of attached beam and opening to side of attached column shall be regarded to wall or ceiling. Okay, this one means, okay, if I put in the same color, attached beam, okay, shall be regarded as the ceiling finishes. Okay, another one, if I highlight again in different color, the column, okay, shall be regarded as abutting wall. That means if you would like to measure the wall finishes, you have to measure the column finishes together. If you need to measure for the ceiling, if they are beam, you have to measure under ceiling finishes. This is the reason why last time in our staircase finishes, we did not measure finishes for landing beam. Do you remember? Because that one is attached to the wall and attached with the ceiling, either one. So we have to measure under this category. Okay, look at this example N Anastasia. You can see the beam and you can see the rafter here, right? So this rafter is measured under what? This rafter is measured under and ceiling finishes. Okay, can you see the second one? And Anastasia, you can see the beam here. The beam here is measured under ceiling finishes as well. Okay, look at on the right hand side. You can see the joist. This is actually the joist. Joist is the timber floor. Okay? Timber suspended floor, and it had been painted with the brown color. But this one also considered as ceiling finishes. We did not measure the joist or suspended floor part as the finishes for the suspended part. That one is part of the ceiling finishes. Okay, so this is the explanation. So the finishes in the bracket plaster and painting for this beam shall be measured under ceiling finishes. We did not measure under another element. This is the meaning of this second clause under SMM. Okay, look at this example. Okay, you can see the column. Okay, you can see the column here is attached with the wall. So this is considered as wall finishes. Same goes to the right hand side to explain S.3.2. Okay, this is another explanation. We did not measure this one separately. Okay, S.3.3, this is also the subclause that we have to consider. Work to side, soffit, and top of isolated beam and side of isolated column shall be given separately. Okay, normally outside the building, you can see the column is constructed without having any wall. Okay, the column is constructed without having any brick or maybe any wall. So this is considered as isolated. Isolated means you can count and you can see one by one. Okay, so if you have this isolated beam on the left hand side, look at this. The beam is not attached with any wall. So this is measured under ceiling finishes. This column is measured under wall finishes, but this is under isolated component. Okay, so whatever component that are isolated means it is not attached with any other element, you have to measure separately. Okay, you cannot measure this one together. So this is one of the explanation and example of application, normally outside the building. So on the right hand side, this one's supposed to be external wall finishes, where this beam will be external ceiling finishes. Okay, but in your item or in the description, you have to mention two surfaces of isolated beam. You can see here there are two items. Number one is plaster. Okay, number two is painting. Okay, we have to write the word two isolated beam even though this one is parked under ceiling element. So that is the explanation of the clause. Okay, now we go to the specific clause and specific rule of measurement for the ceiling. In general, finishing work to ceiling can be classified. I classify into these two categories. Number one is plastered ceiling. Number two is suspended. So on the right hand side, the photo here is considered as plastered ceiling. This is only example of suspended ceiling. Okay. Sometimes if you see the word false ceiling, this is also known as suspended ceiling. Conventional suspended ceiling, where you have the support system that is made from timber, that is also suspended ceiling. And fibrous plaster, also suspended ceiling. Okay, I just want to recap the application. Yeah, if you have single story building, okay, if you have single story building, what will be the ceiling finishes? It must be suspended. Okay, this is, maybe I have to change color. Okay, if you have double story, building, there are possibility that at the ground floor, possibility, I put here ground floor, we consider as plastered ceiling because maybe the surfaces of the plaster is actually come from the upper floor slab. So this one I put soffit of upper floor slab. Okay, but there are also certain situations where at the double story, you did not paint this one because they are another layer of suspended ceiling. So I put here or suspended ceiling. But for the first floor, okay, this one is compulsory to have suspended ceiling. Okay, why it is suspended? Because plastered ceiling are referring to the soffit of your upper floor slab. Okay, soffit and the side of the beam, where if you have the first story building or at the top part, when what normally you can see something like this, isn't it? In general, something like this. So you can see the rafters are there. Okay, that means there is no slab. Okay, if there is no slab, when you install the ceiling finishes, this one will be your ceiling finishes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this ceiling finishes is attached to the roof. So that is why I'm saying one of the example, if you have double story building, the first part is suspended ceiling. Okay, please understand this concept. For the plastered ceiling, because this is normally the component that is made from concrete, so you cannot paint directly. You need to measure plaster and painting. Once you measure for the plaster, you can take quantity for painting. So I put here as TQ, take quantity. Okay, Daniel. Okay, so this is the overview. Commercial building, normally we have suspended ceiling for every single building. Office building, for example, 20-story building, you can see all surface or all story will be covered with the suspended ceiling. Why? Because we have the M&E component underneath the ceiling. Okay, so you have to be careful on that. Please check the detail. Okay, I go to the first part. First part is plastered ceiling. So normally for the plastered ceiling, we have to measure two items. One is plastering, one is painting. Okay, Draven, look at this example. Okay, this part, left and the right hand side. Can you measure under similar item? Draven or Fu Junsheng? Do you remember previously? I did mention in the finishes. Can you measure under one item? Okay. For this one, I would like everyone to refer to as, I put here, as 0.1, 0.5. Okay, so I write again in red color, as 0.1, 0.5. Can everyone look at as 0.1, 0.5? Curved wood shall be given separately stating the radius. Okay, I always mention this one in our discussion so that you know if the work is having the curvature, okay, either for the ceiling, either for the length on plan, you have to measure separately according to as per 1.5. I remember last semester we have one one question in final exam last semester. Take off the quantity for all item in the building finishes under S.1.5. So students have to check in the layout plan and only need to measure any component of the building finishes only at the curve. So whatever item that is not curvature, you don't have to measure. That is the key point. Okay, so if I ask again, Raven, can you measure this one and this one under the same item? The answer is yes or no? No, because on the left hand side is curve, on the right hand side is horizontal, and it is horizontal and it is flat. Okay, so here on the left and on the right also cannot, because you can see the material are different. Okay, so basically kind and quality, the shape and the type, if they are different, you cannot measure together. Even though all these four items required to be plastered and required to be painted, because the specification, maybe the color have been identified by the architect, so you cannot measure similarly. Some of the project they already mentioned this one is painted, but because this painted is made from is going to use brown color, so this one is white color, you cannot measure under one item. If not be mentioned, then you can measure under one item. Okay, if they are similar, exactly similar. Okay, so the category of the plastered ceiling, this one had been highlighted before as well under the floor finishes. This is under EC2 where you can see the word plaster. Okay, so the word plaster, what need to be written? Kind and quality, kind of material, composition of the mix. This one also known as cement and sand. Remember, cement and sand. Then you can put plaster normally 1/6. Okay, method of application, plastering, and then normally method of application is plasticizer. Thickness can be 19, 20, 25, 29, 25, 16. I put here. It can be 16, 19. This is a common specification, yeah. 20 and 25. Number of the coats. This one, if not related to the thickness, then you have to write down number of the coats. Nature of the surface treatment. This is either steel trowel, wood floated, or maybe screeded bed, and so on. And G, normally we don't have to write special curing for the finished work. This is only for the special work. Okay, so the rules are similar as what you can see before. Okay, one thing that I would like to highlight under plastered ceiling and also all the ceiling. Okay, look at S.2.2 in terms of the deduction. What shall be given in square meter? This is the normal, previous one had been highlighted, square meter. But if they are void, no deduction shall be made for the void not exceeding 0.5 meter square. Okay, so normally you can see the void here, right? This is what? What is the name of this component? Anyone know? Anyone know what is the name of this one as at the ceiling? Chua ada? Anyone can answer? Chua Jinyi not here. Chia Zian, what is the name of this component? Chia Zian, what is this? This is, okay, thank you. This is downlight. Okay, so downlight or the electrical components. Okay, look at my further explanation. For turnkey project, the installation for electrical are included in the contract. But if you buy the new house, there is no cutting of the void, because normally if you buy the new house, the contractor only install the wiring. They only install this wiring. Okay, but this component is not part of the project. Okay, if not part of the project, we don't have to cut the surface of the ceiling, so that there is no deduction need to be made for the void. Okay, I put here the void is normally for electrical appliances installation, because that is normally what you can see on the ceiling, right? Okay, so if you put here ceiling rose, what is ceiling rose? Chezian, maybe you are talking about some of the design for the wall light. Sorry, for the light is in circular, square, and so on, where you have to cut. Okay, for the traditional project, normally the installation is only at the wiring. So when they are wiring, the void is exactly not exceeding 0.5 meter square. But if you have very big chandelier, for example, the fan is so big where you have to cut the hole, then you have to consider the void deduction. That is very important. Okay, and then this is the first category, Royal Albert Hall in London. If you look at this one, I give you one simple question. How many items to be measured? You have to refer to this clause. Okay, refer to S.1 posit. Work to ceiling and the beam where it is over 3.5 meter above the floor shall be described in stages of 1.5. So logically, if you are sitting here and this is single story. So one story is normally 3 meter, right? This is about 6 meter. This is about 9 meter. Where if you need to install this ceiling, you need to install very high scaffolding. That means if you need to measure the ceiling at this area and this area, of course you cannot measure together according to this clause. Okay? Why? Because you need to write in stages of 1.5 meter. Okay? I also would like to take note on this one, especially when I give you the task that need to be completed by today. If I mention, let's say room number 1 having the height 6 meter from the floor. Okay, I would like you to be familiar with the word FFL. What is FFL? From floor level. So every time you see the word FFL in the drawing, you should know that this is from floor level. If I mention at the center H1T 6 meter, can you measure with another room that having 3 meter FFL? H1T? H1T is in this class? H1T? Oh, I remember 1T. H1T. If you have the room that is having the floor level 6 meter and another one 3 FFL, can you measure together? H1T? Coverage, can you measure together? Under one item. Same specification, same type of the ceiling. Can you measure together? H1T? Cannot. Why? Coverage, thank you. H1T is there. Can you measure together? Yes or no? I just want to get your response. Yes or no? Go and G. Yes or no? Cannot. Go and G. Go catching. Maybe some of you run away or you are not in front of your laptop. So when I call, you did not respond. Okay, go and G. Sorry. Then Yvonne, can you measure under one item? The answer is cannot because this clause mentioned that the category have to be separate. The category is different. One is not exceeding 3.5 meter. Another one you have to write in stages of 1.5 meter. What does it mean? What does it mean? You have to write down exceeding 3.5, and then after that not exceeding 3.5. After that not exceeding 5 meter. Okay. After that exceeding 5 meter, not exceeding 6.5 meter. So that is the meaning of exceeding or in stages of 1.5 meter. Okay, this one must be measured separately. So this is the explanation on the category of the clauses according to the stage or according to the height. Okay, area of the ceiling. For the plastered ceiling, this one had been highlighted before. You have to measure the area at the soffit of the upper floor slab, side and soffit of the beam. Side and soffit of the beam. So what you need to do when you measure, if you have the detail of the structural drawing, you have to check together. Okay, that means if you check the detail of the beam, that is where you can measure the size of the beam. Okay, so that one must be checked with the structural drawing. Look at this example. This is the example of the description for Hai Lo Zesian, Go Kai Ching, Hyuan Chi. Let's continue with the description for plaster. Cement and sand, 1/6 plaster, approved plasticizer, trowels, move as described. This one had been shown previously in the staircase finishes. Remember, we have the plastering and we have the painting. So this is the surface of the soffit of the slab, including the side and soffit of the beam. So this is the example. If you are given the dimension on plan, basically we have to measure the area on plan. The unit of measurement is meter square. Okay, and I will say that sometimes you can take the quantity exactly as the floor finishes. So if you measure the floor finishes first, you can take quantity. If you measure ceiling finishes first, that means you have to show the calculation. Okay, same as the floor finishes. But look at the last part, at sides of the beam. So let's say in this case, there are 4 numbers of sides of the beam. Let's say something like this. Okay, so this is your beam, and then this is the side of your ceiling. Sorry, here this line. So how many sides? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 sides of the beam. Okay, and then after that you have to consider addition of the soffit of the beam. So that one must be added. But here I didn't show, so that one you must consider the addition. Okay, or maybe in this case there are 2 sides, and then if there are 2 numbers of the beam, you have to times 2. So this is only example. Description of the plastering for ceiling at ceiling 3.5 must be measured separately according to S.1.6. Okay, so this is one of the example of the measurement, similar quantity, but because the height is different, you have to measure separately. You can see all the quantity are similar. Okay, use the term exceeding and not exceeding, and you have to write in stages of 1.5 meter. This is the story height, exceeding 3.5 meter. Okay, you can see the detail, heading and description are similar. Okay, the second one, we have to carry out the painting according to S.1.1 and according to U.1.1. Okay, so section U mentioned that internal and external ceiling or floor or wall must be measured separately. As long as you have internal and external, you have to measure separately under U.1.1. Okay, this one also the important clause that you have to refer, U.3.2. Remember cruciform? Cruciform, last time we you remember we measured according to U.3.2. Cruciform, if you have the surfaces more than 300 mm, you have to measure in meter square, not exceeding and isolated in number, but not exceeding normally in meter. So which one falls under ceiling? Definitely the first one. Okay, because ceiling is very wide area, so normally the unit is meter square. Okay, this is the example. What you can do, you can actually take quantity. If you measure this one first, then you have to show the installation, the calculation for the installation of this ceiling. Okay, but if you not, you have to show the calculation again. Okay, so the description is similar as what we did before. There are 3 layers. You can either use undercoat, emulsion coat, and according to the specification, prepare prime with 1 coat of acrylic resisting wall sealer. Normally the ceiling and the wall having similar specification, so you can use the same specification, 2 finishing coat, 1 undercoat according to the specification. If the detail is not being given, you can refer to the lecture notes to put in your description later. But the description, you can put 2 surfaces of plastered soffit of the slab or plastered ceiling, including the side and soffit of the beam. Okay, this is the example of the application in photo. Normally, we have to measure this one separately because the price for the painting for the ceiling is the most expensive. Okay, that is the most expensive. So this is the third example. The fourth example, is 2 surfaces of plastered ceiling, but this one can be for if you have the stages of the height is different, then you can measure separately. Okay. Now we go to the second category. The second category of the ceiling is having the structure, the ceiling joist and the noggin. Okay, the second one you have to carry out painting, and of course this is the suspended ceiling itself, access panel. So in general, this is the first item. Ceiling board is measured in meter square. After you measure the ceiling board, you have to measure painting also in meter square. Okay, item on the top, this one, the structure, only required to be measured if they are detailed. So I put here only if they are details. Okay, if not, you have to put this structure and installation in the first item or in the ceiling board measurement. Okay, we call this one as the framework system. So I put again, this is number 1, this is number 2, okay, this is number 3. I put if any. If there is no detail, you don't have to measure the ceiling joist or the noggin, because at the end the ceiling joist will be measured under roof. Our next topic is roof, so you can see ceiling joist is one of the components for the roof. Even for the noggin also, if they are detailed, then you have to measure. If not, we don't have to measure this, because sometimes you can see that the detail from the supplier or manufacturer, they already put ceiling board with the framework system, so there is no measurement for the framework. Okay, item number 4, this is compulsory. Okay, I put here, not if any, compulsory. Compulsory, at least compulsory. Okay, at least one building having one access panel. Access panel, this is the example, is the ceiling where it can be open so that the people can go on the top, maybe to install wiring for electrical, air conditioning system or any M&E works. So access panel is measured in number, and it must be measured at least one building, one unit. I think nowadays for residential, one building having 2 unit of access panel. Okay, if there is no information, you have to at least measure one item. Okay, because there are a lot of information sometimes it's not being given, and in your studio also there is no specification on that, so you have to at least measure one item for access panel. Okay, let's move to the first one. To show you the recap part on the conventional suspended ceiling system. The drywall, also known as the plasterboard. Remember coverage, drywall? The drywall is the term used in UK. In UK, the term used is drywall. In Malaysia, they use the term plasterboard. But this is actually the same thing. Okay, so this is the ceiling joist detail that is made from timber. Conventionally, the method is using timber. So whether you need to measure this one or not, it depends on the detail. Normally, this ceiling joist is not to be measured under ceiling unless that one is put in the specification where drywall come together with ceiling joist. That one you have to measure under one item. Okay, if not, the ceiling joist is not to be measured. Okay, the second one is the suspended ceiling that is normally you can see in the shop lot. In shop lot, or maybe the shop unit in the supermarket, or maybe in the mall. Okay, one of the unit, they have this one. We call this one as bracket and wire hanger. This one is required to be measured if they are detailed. If not, the main support plus the perimeter frame plus the bracket is required to be measured under the ceiling itself. So in your description, we normally put including the framework, and then bracket and hanger, wire hanger, bracket and wire hanger, bracket. This is actually the support system, bracket and wire hanger. So use the word including. Okay, wire hanger, sorry. Right, drop-in ceiling tile. This is actually the ceiling board or the ceiling itself, but it comes in pieces by pieces. So that's why sometimes you can see the architect use the word ceiling tile, because it come in one piece by one piece or one board by one board. Okay, long cross T. This is the support system or the perimeter frame system. The bracket and wire hanger is required to be installed directly to the suspended floor slab. Okay, this is actually the soffit of your suspended floor slab. So this one must be written in the description unless the details are given. Okay, so I give you this example. This is the example of the description if they are detail given for the ceiling joist and the nogging. You have to measure in meters, stating the size according to section M. Okay, under section M, M.1.1, kind and quality, and then this is under carcassing. You can refer to section M.1, M.1 under under right. After that, if they are nogging detail, also you have to measure. If you would like to know the difference between nogging and ceiling joist, the ceiling joist is horizontal, the nogging must be the other way around. So if I ask again, maybe you will see this one again. Okay, they say this is your roof, this is the rafter. Okay, so where is the ceiling joist? Where is ceiling joist? Ceiling joist is here, is it? So it will be repeated for maybe 600 mm and so on. Let's say this is another line. So your ceiling joist is in blue color. Sorry, I draw again. Ceiling joist is in blue color. This is your ceiling joist. This is ceiling joist. Where is nogging? Nogging is the other way around in green color. That is your nogging. Okay, so if the nogging details are given, you have to measure. If not, this one will be measured under ceiling system. Okay, so this is the other way around for you to have the support for the ceiling system. This is one of the example of the description for the suspended ceiling that is made from asbestos-free cement sheet ceiling. This one normally comes pieces by pieces. Traditionally, you can see this is the shape, and then the black color is actually your nogging. This is the nogging and the ceiling joist, either one. Okay, so it comes in one piece and one piece. So what you need to do, if I zoom in, how the installation is. This one having nail. Okay, so at the edge of this ceiling board, you have to nail. So in terms of the description, you have to mention, you have to state how the installation is. Nail at the ceiling joist and nogging. Okay, so the rule of measurement are similar in meters square. You have to measure the internal, similar as internal floor finishes. Okay, so this is the example. They say this is the area you need to measure for the internal area. Okay, one of the example. They say there are 4 similar areas, so you times 4. This is the next item, compulsory to measure access panel. So access panel must be measured in number, and this one you can make assumption if no information given. As long as there is one item, I consider correct. If there is no specification, then you can consider only one item. But this one must be measured in number. Okay. Okay, let's move to the next one. This is another example. Forming access panel, but this is the example of the access panel that is made from plaster ceiling, where the side of the area are made from plastered ceiling. You can see this is actually the surfaces of plaster and painting, and this is another example. Okay, if the ceiling is made from plaster ceiling, you can actually see that there is no frame. it is just the plaster ceiling that can be cut. So what you need to do, you just push with your hand, and this one can be open and you can put aside. So that is actually the easiest way. Measure in number. Okay, so before we proceed, do the thinking. What is the ceiling finishes required for this photo? Anyone can answer? Fine. Okay, this is to recap on the timber suspension system. If you need to have, you need to measure this one in detail. If they are details, you have to measure one by one. This is the ceiling joist, this is the runner, and then this is the clip system where the white color is actually the white color is your ceiling. Okay, and then this is the galvanized metal suspension system. Nowadays we are using aluminum. A lot of projects nowadays are using aluminum, so this one also must be written in the description. If no detail, you just write down including the galvanized metal suspension system in the description of ceiling board. Okay, right, this is also the same thing, the framing system for the ceiling. You can see the installation is square by square. Why? Because at the end you have to install at this particular panel. Okay, this is the grid system for the ceiling installation. Right, now I would like you to move to the last part for the ceiling system other than ceiling board. Can everyone go to clause S.22? 22. Previously, we have done under S.17, that is ceiling lining, suspended ceiling, and so on. So one of the famous category of the ceiling that we have, especially for the residential, we have plaster ceiling. Okay, plaster ceiling, in technical word, the word is fibrous plaster. So you can refer to S.22, S.22, S.18 is the general clause. So I put here general clause is S.18. This is general. Okay. And then you can see that they are accessory for the plaster ceiling. One of the accessory for the plaster ceiling is cove, molding, and the cornice. Normally the famous one is cornice. Okay, this is the cornice. The cornice must be measured in meter, but you have to write the girth. Okay, stating the girth of the visible contour. How you want to measure the girth? This is the girth. If the girth is not being given, you can make assumption. If the girth is given in the specification, then you have to state. Okay, this is the example of the cornice that you can see from the construction. You can see the cornice are installed basically at the edges of the wall. Okay, at the edges of the wall, at the ceiling. So when you measure the cornice, you have to measure in meter. Okay, let's say the engineer did not give the specification, and let's say the engineer only give the information from the section view. Let's say this is 100, this is another 100. So you should know that the total girth here is about 200 mm. That one must be stated in the description. Okay, so in case the engineer give you the option to write down the brand or the company or maybe the detail as shown in the drawing, then you have to write down the girth or the cornice as per shown in the drawing number what, or in accordance to the architect specification. Okay, you can see on the right hand side here are a lot of example given for the cornice. Okay, sometimes you are given this brochure, then you are given the right to choose, or sometimes the engineer has to choose which one, engineer or architect has to choose which one will be the design used for your particular building. Mainly for the building that having the finishes to be installed directly during the construction activity. Okay, you can see the design varies. Okay, the next item that you may have to measure is known as bedding and the corners. Okay, you may see this item available at certain space from the corner of your cornice. Maybe here is about 300 mm from the corner of the cornice
So the bidding is also similar principle as the cornice. You have to measure in meter. Okay, but then if you are given the perimeter of the ceiling, you have to consider deduction of the space. Okay, I give you example. Let's say the perimeter or the length here is about 2,500. So how you would like to get the length? You have to take 2,500, deduct 300 for one side, and on the left hand side 300. Same goes to the width. Okay, let's say the width here is given as 9,000. Okay, the beading is installed 300 mm from each corner. So 9,000 deduct 300 times 2. That means 900 deduct 9,000 deduct 600. So you get 8,400. Okay, then you have to times by 2. It is actually similar as a principle to measure the perimeter of the ceiling space, but then you have to consider what is the length given from the corner, or what is the length given from each side from the cornice. That is how you measure the beading, because the beading is installed not at the edges between the wall and the ceiling, but then the beading is installed at the space of your plaster ceiling. Okay, let's look at the next item, possible item to be measured. Basically for the hotel project or maybe for the bungalow, a private project, you may see the arch and the dome. Okay, the arch and the dome shall be enumerated or shall be measured in number. You can check the clause in the SMM, same as the medallions and same as the component to put basically the chandelier or basically for the fan spaces. Okay, you can see this example. So this item has to be measured in number. In case you are not be given with any design available in the drawing, so basically we have to write in accordance to the architect approval or maybe in accordance to the supplier drawing or supplier brochure. Okay, it is normal that the supplier brochure are basically included in the consideration or maybe included in the manufacturer detail as per design given. Okay, this is another example, but this one is made from other than plaster ceiling. Okay, the example for the arch and the dome that required to be measured in number. Next, you can see the example of the item that required to be measured in number, but then we call this one as medallion. Okay, you can see the example of the installation of the medallion by this worker. Okay, the medallion is used to install the lighting or maybe for the fan purposes or for the electrical fitting. In order for you to write the specification, let's say the medallion is given based on the diameter, so you have to write down medallion in what shape or in diameter. Let's say it is not be given, then it is sufficient for you to write in accordance to the architect approval and as per drawing number what, because sometimes the design is not circular on plan, or the design can be varies, or the design can be like star shape like what you see before in the previous slide. So in that case, the diameter may not be sufficient. That is the reason why you have to write in accordance to drawing number or the design detail according to what manufacturers, a brand or manufacturers company and so on. Okay, there will be no deduction to be considered when you install this, because this is normally less than 0.5 meter square. So if the opening is less than 0.5 meter square as you see under S.1, there will be no deduction need to be made. Okay, for the installation of the fitting. Okay, next one, you can see the cobble and accessories also may be applicable in the installation for the plaster ceiling, but then for the cobble and accessories, you normally see at the edge, or maybe for the free opening, or maybe at the opening between one area to another area. This is the example of the cobble. Sometimes you can see the example of the cobble seems like the molding. Okay, if you look at the architectural design for the Chinese temple, for example, there are a lot of cobble at the opening of the temple. So that one also required to be measured, but maybe the design cannot be illustrated or maybe cannot be impressed in a proper wording. So you have to write in accordance to drawing number or in accordance with the design shown in what drawing number. Okay, sometimes we have the project where they are specific supplier used to supply the molding for the Chinese temple. This is the example where you have to measure as well in number. Okay, another example that you can see for the cobalt and accessories for the arch. This is the big arch. Can you see that? The big arch where the molding are here. The molding for the cobalt are here. So it is not easily described by stating, okay, this is the flower molding, but then you have to refer to the drawing. Okay, this is another example that required to be measured in number. But if you look at the bottom, this one is exposed outside the building, so definitely at the bottom for the cobalt you have to measure this cobalt outside the building under external ceiling finishes. It is normally attached between the wall and the ceiling. Okay, and last one for the accessories for the plaster ceiling, fall under the same category as the dome. We have the light panels and the dome itself. Okay, previously you can see the term used for the medallions, normally used to receive the fan fitting, but for the dome or the light panels, also the design are almost similar like the design for the medallion. So this one also required to be measured in number. Okay, fully described by stating the shape, the drawing number, or the brand, or maybe the diameter if the design had been given. Okay, this one also measured in number under the same category as the arch, dome, and medallion. With that, that will be the end of the discussion for the measurement of the plaster ceiling. Make sure the first thing that you have to do is to divide the item between internal and external finishes. Then you have to check the height category, whether it is more than 3.5 or less than 3.5. Then only after that you have to divide the category based on either they are plastered ceiling or maybe they are false suspended ceiling. Okay, then you can start writing your taking off list. Thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum to all my Muslim students.